I'm Marty Sherman, class of 73. The Volunteer Leadership Development Task Force has identified 3 types of volunteers: those who lead by example, those who lead others, and those who lead communities. All of us at one point or another in our volunteer life will fulfill these roles. And as such, there are competencies that are necessary for us to fulfill them successfully. We need to learn these competencies so that we know our responsibilities, we feel accountable to our volunteer organization and committed to Cornell, and we have the skills to do the job and do it successfully. When leading a community, one of those competencies is to imagine. Imagining can be incredibly positive and create change for an organization, as was evidenced yesterday's luncheon by the president of the Philadelphia Zoo and the changes that he has accomplished there. It's the ability to imagine that helps make a leader, whether in the workforce or the volunteer world. During his tenure as the Rebecca Q. and James C. Morgan Dean of the College of Human Ecology, Dean Alan Mathios has sparked an evolution that has, according to the recent issue of the Human Ecology magazine, profoundly shaped the faculty, broadly enhanced the student experience, and elevated the reputation and status of the college on Cornell's campus and around the world. That can't be accomplished without imagination. This morning, Dean Mathios will share his thoughts on using imagination to lead a community and how fostering imagination can lead to great things. Dean Mathios.
So thank you all so much for being here. I see so many great friends, so it's going to be great. First of all, I want to notice how small the imagine button is. And so just a little bit of imagination could do great things here. So what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about how I led the College of Human Ecology, but with a particular eye towards sort of the role of volunteers, as well as how to think about your volunteer organizations that you're in and how to make the most of them. So I'll start with when I became interim dean. So I was interim dean before I was dean for the year. And it was the last year of my mom's life. She died right after I became interim dean. But she saw me become interim dean. And and I love Mom, we had a great relationship. But she did have a mechanism for like doing a computer search for the most annoying possible response to something that I would say. She just didn't. So, like, Mom, I became interim dean of College of Human Ecology, and her response was, "What's human ecology?" Seriously, that was the. And then, what do you do in the summer? That was always what my mom. And then when I told her my salary, that's all? I was like, oh gosh. But what I quickly realized when I became dean was that the what is human ecology, and that was a real response that I should take very carefully, is that how do we define what human ecology is? And if I asked people in a room when I first became dean, you would get similar type stories, very complex stories. It would take you 10 minutes to describe human ecology. And if you asked our leadership team, you'd get similar but not quite the same words. And I'm like, this is a problem. We need to define ourselves so that we can articulate what's special about us and what we're about. So it took a long time to actually come up with a reasonably precise mission statement. And I know it sounds kind of corny and things, but actually having a clear mission statement is extremely important. So whatever organization you're involved with as a volunteer, look at that mission, try to really hone it so that everyone's clear about the purpose and the goals for the organization. So the process of developing a mission statement actually took an amazing long time. So everyone who came into my office, everyone, student, alum, business partner, anyone, was, so what do you think human ecology is? And I would listen, take some notes, and then I would bring it to, in some sense, for those of you who've served on advisory councils to your colleges, it's one of the most important, from a dean's perspective, one of the most important volunteer groups on campus. Because I use that advisory council to really hone the language and to really come up sort of with a very informed group, but with an external perspective that's really helpful in defining, and shaping how you describe yourselves. So I'm also very financially careful. And so I wanted this mission statement plastered on a wall. You walk into the dean's suite, and there it is in your face. Everyone will see it. And so it couldn't be very long, because every letter is expensive, and I'm like, how much is this going to cost me? We have great design students in the college, so they were going to design the wall for me. It's just a phenomenal wall. We got it down to 14 words, which I thought was, because we started with like the story, and that's not going to work. And we hammered it out, and it was really great conversations with my advisory council. Every word was debated. So the 14 words ended up being improving lives by exploring and shaping human connections to natural, social, and built environments. And that has brought us together as a college in ways that it's phenomenal to think about how just coming up with a statement like that can help focus an organization. And it really worked great. But the challenge, once we came up with this, is how to spread the word. How do you get people to be aware of the mission statement, feel it, live it, have the volunteers part of it? And that's been a big part of my deanship, was constantly talking about it, putting it in our magazine, putting it in all our communications, describing it to students at our welcome address. And then we started a way to enculturate the college with it by starting these breakfasts where every 3 or so months, every new person, not the students because we do that at the welcome thing, but postdocs, staff, faculty, anyone in our business service centers, anyone coming into our college environment, we welcome them together and break, first of all, some of the hierarchy in education. Any president, provost, deans will talk about the importance of the faculty renewal, faculty research, and their impact on students, the education. That's what drives a university. But we all know that the entire collection of people that are part of an organization really make it work. And so how to break the barriers between the faculty and the rest of the support mechanisms that make everything work was really important to me. So everyone's in the same room. We're not divided by faculty and staff and have separate ones for faculty, separate ones for staff. We're all together, and we talk about the mission statement. And we talk about how every person, the students, the staff, the janitors, everybody in this college needs to see their line of sight to that mission statement. And I say, when I walk into my office, this sounds really corny, but I walk into my office each day, and you know how some days are better than others, and the first 2 words I look at on the mission statement wall is improving lives. That's what we're about. That's what everything we do to educate the students, do the research, do the outreach. It's all about that. And it actually makes my day a little bit better every time I walk into my office and look at that. So I want everyone to see that in the college. Everyone feel like what they're doing. Some of it's pretty detailed, pretty, sometimes not very sexy, but it's very important that they see that it matters. So Joel Molina, I don't know how widespread this video is, did a wonderful video of a metal worker who comes from Groton, New York, and makes parts for one of the major big research projects for Cornell, and how proud he is of the precision metalwork that needs to be done to actually have these faculty do this work. And he's as part of the solution as anybody, because without that precision, the instrumentation wouldn't work, the research wouldn't happen. And so it's like that type of culture that you try to build. And one of the things I'm most proud of after I'm in my 11th year as dean, is I have a sense, and maybe, this is what I hear, is that people feel like human ecology is a real community, one that has this vibrancy, this sense of when you're in it, you're a little bit happier, even if you're doing a job that, sometimes a day is not so great, but it's a little bit better because you're in a community that sort of shares some things, shares a sense of itself, and knowing that you're impacting, we have 300 staff in the college, knowing that you're making their lives a little bit more fun and enjoyable. We have another volunteer group of staff that work together to take advantage of what Cornell is. So they go organize, go to talks with faculty, research talks, so they learn what the faculty are doing. They'll go to the synchrotron and take a tour of that. They'll go to the Botanic Gardens. They'll go to the Lab of O. We have massage day where people will set up massage chairs and staff just go do that. Those types of investments are not expensive at all, but they help build a culture of caring, and that makes a big difference. So that's sort of at the biggest level, trying to define who we are, and for every volunteer group, knowing who you are, what your mission is, getting that mission known so that everyone is part of it, everyone sees their work relative to that is a big part of what I think leadership is. So the next part of this is, so now you have this mission statement, people kind of buying in slowly but surely, and then you have to figure out, and I would say just like the students at Cornell, the most common stress they have in some sense is trying to figure out where they're going to make a mark, not in their classes, that's kind of set based on their major and what they're doing, but out of the 1,000 clubs, I remember going on an information session at Cornell because my daughter ended up going there. And it's like, well, we have 3,000 student clubs and this, and you could do so many things. So how do the students narrow this down to figure out how they can create meaning in their lives by the amazing opportunities that Cornell offers? And as a dean, it's exactly the same thing. How do you pick or choose some principles that help narrow the types of investments you need to do to create excellence? And so what I always think of, and I have a real advantage in this because I'm a commissioner for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, which actually is right up the block. So at 36th and Market Street is the Middle States Commission on Higher Ed, and they accredit Cornell and 570 other academic institutions, all the institutions in Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York. So it includes Princeton, Columbia, NYU, but it also includes Broome County Community College, Monroe Community College, all of the education institutions. To get access to federal financial aid, you have to be accredited by Middle States. And so I get to see 500 institutions talking about their mission, talking about how they are using their distinct take on their mission to create some identification about them relative to the marketplace. And so I've learned a huge amount, not only from the Princeton, Columbia's, NYU's, but the community colleges and how they try to define themselves. And so from this, I derive two fundamental principles that guide almost every decision I make as dean, because you can make so many decisions that go in so many different directions. So I'll talk about just the two principles that I use that I think help distinguish human ecology to some degree, certainly, and sort of take advantage of Cornell to help distinguish human ecology. So the first, and I'll start with an accounting example. So a typical faculty member at Cornell will spend about half their time on research and half their time on education, okay? And for the education component, they have to do advising, they have to teach undergraduate courses, they have to teach graduate courses. So if you're an undergrad applying to Cornell, why in the world do you want to go to Cornell if you're only going to have 20% of the attention of the faculty, maybe? It's a really interesting, to me, this was a really fascinating question. And I think it's an artificial distinction, but only artificial if you take advantage of certain things. And so the advantage, the way we've thought about this is that if we can integrate the research with the faculty into the education and curriculum of the students, And because we're land grant, and Cornell and Human Ecology is one of 4 contract colleges that has a real outreach mission specifically, we have extension offices on every county in New York State. If we can take that outreach mission and integrate that with our undergraduate education, for graduate education, research is already integrated. We can do something really distinctive and really special. So you hear a lot about flipping the classroom, and instead of just lectures, having students interact with each other. Cornell's really doing a great job with that. In fact, in College of Arts and Sciences, Julia Levy-Thomas, she is the head of pedagogy now for Cornell, and she flipped her physics classroom and has done amazing things in teaching physics at Cornell, and that's spreading all over Cornell. But even more fundamental than flipping the classroom is when students are actually participating in creating knowledge through research, not only absorbing knowledge, they actually have to use their curriculum to help do that. They're creating new knowledge, and then they're out in the field, out in the counties, out in the world, actually using that research to make a difference. That is what makes something special. So a lot of our activities as a college is focused on that integration, and it's not that resource intensive to make that happen, because the faculty are great at getting research grants and have the amazing talent of our undergrads that are relatively cheap to put on grants. Think of that integration right there. You get some of the most talented people in the United States and the world are in your classrooms, and now they're in your research labs. It's amazing. Then you start saying it enough, and it starts becoming a culture. So what I see some former students, the buzz at QMAC is when you're a freshman even, and I talk about it in my welcome address, it's not whether you're going to be in a research lab necessarily, but it's like, whose lab am I going to join? That's where we've gotten to by saying it enough. And so now I verify this with the senior survey. So the seniors at Cornell fill out a survey every year, and one of the questions is, have you had the opportunity to work with a faculty member on research? And they ask for credit, for pay, for credit, for this, for that. And when you accumulate all those answers, we're about 75 to 80% of our seniors say they've had that experience. And that is higher than any other college at Cornell. And it's so meaningful to me because I know the learning that happens in those labs. And that means particular different types of learning styles of students. That doesn't matter that much when you're in a research lab because you're learning on a very one-on-one personal level. It's like taking the classic Oxford model of mentorship and embedding it into this large Cornell population. It's really wonderful to see. So that's been another thing. The other question on the senior survey I always go to is, have you been involved in your community in a meaningful way? And 100% of human ecology students self-report. Now, it's very self-selected on the admission criteria, that to get into HUMAC, you got to really talk about how you want to help others and be part of those types of communities. So it is a little self-selected there, but it's really great to see at least it's followed through in the college. So that principle guides a lot of what we do. The second principle is that Cornell human ecology can be better when every other college at Cornell thrives. Because our multidisciplinary approach at HUMAC means that we can work very collaboratively because we overlap in a lot of different areas. So one thing I charged every department in the college to do is to take advantage of the strength of the breadth of Cornell and create cross-college collaborations that enhance everybody's research. So when Lance Collins did a wonderful job in the dialogue with Martha. We have incredible collaborations with the engineering college that have been started by this culture of collaboration. So I'll give one example that's really taking off now. An engineering professor and a professor of nutritional sciences in HUMAC have invented this thing called the Nutri Phone. And there's a startup business that's being developed around this. Put a little device on your phone, and guess what? Drop of blood on that, instant within a couple of minutes, diagnosis of nutrition deficiencies in the blood, potential nutrition ways to solve those problems, and get an instant sense of what you can do in that community to increase the nutritional health anywhere in the world. So this engineer and nutrition person are working together, and it's growing in terms of the scope of what can be diagnosed through the analysis of blood. It took an engineer to help actually develop this. It took the nutrition person to have the knowledge of nutrition and its metabolic implications to figure out what to try to engineer. Amazing collaboration. All over human ecology, there's collaborations about this. We collaborate with the other one I'll just mention because I think it's budding up so fast is we have the world's top hotel school. I'm sure there's some hoteliers here. So go into a hospital and the last thing that you often see is the word hospitality. And so we started this institute called the Cornell Institute for Healthy Futures, and take hospitality management principles from the hotel school, combine it with our Master's in Health Administration program, strength in health delivery, and then in our design programs, we have the world's top faculty in developing healthcare facilities that are designed to foster health. Put these three disciplines together, and only Cornell can do it. Only a combination of human ecology and the hotel school could pull off something like this. The only academic place in the United States that I know of that is bringing this together, and guess what's happening? The corporate world is taking notice because they see with the aging of the population, this is big, big deal. And so we have health insurance companies, hotels, designers, hospitals, all becoming corporate sponsors, spending their valuable resources investing in this multidisciplinary collaboration. Every area, we have joint programs with the law school and human development. All of this has happened because I want the strength of every other college to be called Cornell to help the students of human ecology and vice versa. So when you have two principles like that, it's actually relatively easy to make investment decisions. Is this going to really support students being embedded in research? Is this going to really help take the strength of Cornell and take it to the next level? So when you're thinking about your groups, think about not the local group that you're necessarily in, but the broader Cornell holistic system that it's in, because from the student perspective, when you look at what courses they take, they're taking courses all over Cornell. They're doing this implicitly. And so helping one college, so when I saw the big gift for biomedical engineering, I'm like, yes, that's awesome, because we have students in our college that are going to benefit tremendously from the coursework and the research that's happening in biomedical engineering. And I think with the deans, we have a great group of deans at Cornell, and we all get along great, and we all have great conversations about how to collaborate. And that culture should be in the volunteer groups as well. And I'll end just by talking about sort of style as well. So one of the things I've noticed, and then when I talk to CEOs of virtually every major corporation that's involved with Cornell, because we do this in our development activities, almost all of them will say, you can hire top people in finance, you can hire top people in information technology. What makes an organization thrive or not is not the CEO knowing finance or knowing IT. It's the much more subtle but trainable skills in how to organize people and how to interact in what I would call the H, human resource scope of things. And I've learned a lot of lessons being dean, and I think the one lesson I like to share for any groups is that we often go into situations based on information that's given to us, and that has created assumptions actually before we start talking to the people that are involved in those things. We come in with very strong priors, and it's very easy to get sucked into that, and it's so important not to underreact to that first reaction. Oh, I can't believe the faculty member did that. We've got to discipline them. We have to talk to them. They can't treat someone like that. Instead of reacting like that, gathering information, underreacting to it, is really, you learn a huge amount that no problem is as obvious as it first seems. And if you go in with assumptions, and the way I learned this, and to Cornell's credit, they provide a lot of training around these things. So there's this thing called Cornell Interactive Theater. And I don't know if volunteer groups have ever experienced working with this group, but they come up with scenarios and there's actors playing different roles. So the one I remember the most is, again, they give you all this background information on this faculty member who's so mean to everyone, and you go in ready to discipline, and you have to play the department chair that has to solve this problem. And so you're going in and you're interacting with actors playing this. And I'm watching some colleagues less experienced in leading, and watching them get sucked into what they wrote and read. And they're instantly trying to get to a solution, instantly siding with the staff member over the faculty member because you were set up to. And then, if you actually dug deeper, there were real serious problems with that staff member that was causing this action to happen because they were undermining, in some sense, the program and bringing all this out, and how few people got to the solution that needed to be gotten to. Watching all that has made me learn great lessons, and I think it's a great lesson for everyone, that these HR skills are so fundamental to leadership. And then I'll really end by talking about these things. So this is a 4S. Okay, I am 6 versions behind. I'm waiting for the 12 before I upgrade. Now, why do I have a 4S? I actually found out what the S stands for. I never knew. Like, is it for superlative, for super? It's actually Siri's on this thing. So I could talk to Siri if I wanted to. The reason I don't spend much time upgrading is I actually try to do as much business face-to-face as possible in the college, because the endless email exchanges, the endless texting back and forth constrains conversations in ways that I don't think we fully recognize. And if you just get in a room together, you can actually not only save 60, 70 emails, but you can actually do it much faster. And you can see body language. You can learn so much for just looking in someone's eyes and seeing the stress or not in a situation. And so a lesson I've learned is, if at all possible, face-to-face interaction. This is what's great about CALC. It's very easy to think you could do your business by email, by even Skyping and everything. It isn't the same. It isn't even close to the same in my eyes. Getting together face-to-face, and the more you can run a college, and we're small enough that it's possible we're in 1 or 2, 3 buildings close to each other, we can say, just come to my office. We roam around, we talk to each other. The more you have to depend on this, I think the more mistakes you're going to make in leadership. Well, thank you. And then the sort of what I would call the underreact to everything. Emotions can run very high on things, and what I've noticed makes my life a lot easier. What I've noticed, and this is probably true in many organizations, is about 80% of your problems go away by themselves. If you actually, most things sort of seem, oh my God, this is happening. I'm like, give it a couple of days. People work things out themselves often. And then you never hear about them again. I guess it solved itself. Needed no action, needed no authoritative person coming in and doing these things. And so underreacting to those initial things is so, to me, so important. You don't want to act out of emotion. If you want to write an aggressive email, fine, let your juices come out. Never send it. Never send it. And that thing that allows you to retrieve the message is even worse, because it said this message was attempted to be retrieved. And then they get it anyway, and they're like, oh. Don't depend on any technology for getting back an email you didn't really want to send. So you can write it, sit on it, and then yes, many problems need to be addressed. But underreacting to the emotion of this situation gets lower. to me, is a very important thing for everybody in their lives, actually, in your social lives, in your personal lives. We react way too much from initial reaction, in my view. So I will end with that. Now we have lots of time for a Q&A. Thank you.
Dean Mathios, I'm going to kick off questions here. As you talk about collaboration, obviously the thought of a collaboration across campus, across departments, has come from somebody's imagination. But we all know there are naysayers in the group. And these naysayers will throw out every obstacle that they can come up with to getting something accomplished, to come to fulfilling an idea that is not theirs.
Yep.
How do you work around that?
It's a great question. So first I will answer it by talking about how important volunteer support is for innovation. So when you become a dean, there's no training. And in fact, I would say almost every dean has come to these positions by being a faculty member and seems like they're reasonable. Seriously, it's like you're not trained to be an administrator, you're not trained in business, in leadership, you're just given this role. So it's actually, you enter it, no matter how confident a dean seems, you enter it with this sort of what's called the imposter problem a little bit, this sense of, do I know what I'm doing? And what I've noticed, and on my thank you tour as I'm going around the country, I say this to all the groups, is don't ever underestimate how important your support is of your leaders, because we get confidence from that. It allows us to be bold, knowing that there's enough trust that that develops. You have to earn that trust. But if you've earned that trust, there's enough trust that you will get the support you need to innovate. And when you get resistance from that, you have to have developed the relationships so that you often will get the benefit of the doubt in that. If you try to do bold changes too quickly without the trust being built, that's where a lot of things start going wrong. Because it's easy to explain. I could explain to many people some of the tough decisions we made. I'll give you one example that we did that was very difficult to do. So for many of you may know, we had a wonderful, warm daycare center in MVR Hall. And it was kids, you heard the little kids, their voices, they're playing. It was so nice. It was so nice. But human ecology had evolved to no longer be about training teachers how to teach. We became much more focused on the macro child development issues, so that if you eventually became a teacher, understanding child development is the fundamental thing that we're experts in. And so moving away from educate the teacher to focus on child development meant that running a daycare center is kind of out of scope with the faculty research. And if it's not integrated, remember my big thing about integration, we're facing a situation where we're no longer fully integrating all these things because it's sort of a standalone. Now, how in the world do you kick kids out of MVR? Not easy. Now, fortunately, at the time, Mary Opperman, who I have great respect for, Vice President of Human Resources for Cornell, and my local HR person, Sandy Dimitri, turns out they were building, for those of you who know the campus well, they were building a daycare center in North Campus, right behind the townhouse, by the townhouses. And it was a much bigger place, and we invested, human ecology, most people won't know this, we invested actually quite a bit in making sure there were observation booths so that students could study child development, but that we were out of the business. Let me tell you how many people were in my office crying. How can we be so mean-spirited to do this? How can we do this? I was associate dean then, and the dean was Lisa Stoyano-Koiko, and together we were working on this together. And it took the trust of the people understood that we were trying to become the next best thing in child education. We wanted to be the best child education program in the world, and it meant reusing that space. So guess what is in that space now? You would never guess human ecology would have this, but we built for the campus an MRI imaging facility with a functional magnetic resonance imaging capability so that we can have people faced with how they make decisions, how they behave, how do adolescents behave, scanning them, working with the engineering college on the science of MRI, the CALC program on looking at plant systems and looking at root systems and using MRIs to understand those. We have rabbits from the vet school coming over and scanning rabbits and understanding that. And the coolest one of all, the hoteliers here again, people want to understand how people better can figure out where wines are from and understand sort of why can some people do that well and others. So this is amazing. We have a dispenser. While you're in the magnet, you get wine. How cool is that? So the point here is by shutting down a center that was no longer aligned with that principle, we had resistance. We had significant resistance. But there was enough trust in the college that the volunteers saw that mission-relevant work could be accomplished by doing this. And so at times you're going to have to take some volunteers. And there's something really important to remember, that the colleges that you're from are very different now than they were when you were students. And having people embrace that is extremely important, because the history of the colleges make a big deal in who we are, but they should not constrain who we are. And so having that open mind about where things are going is extremely important to us, and we feel your support. We really do. It gives us that confidence, as I said, to do the things, that imagine part that's so important. Other questions? Yes?
Hi, I just wanted to ask if you would comment on, in terms of imagine, physical space of the college and of other spaces on campus, and during the term of your deanship, how you, when you started to this point, how did you make those decisions and what went into those decisions?
Sure. So for those of you who've been to campus and seen the human ecology facilities, it's amazing. And it's amazing because of a disaster that happened in the college. So this was one of the most stressful days in the history of the college. In 2001, we were removing some carpets in what was called North MVR Hall, which was 70,000 square feet, 80,000 square feet of our space. Wow, it sounded like they were having a good time back then. And engineers came and said, this building is not built correctly and could collapse. It was June, I forget the exact date. We were given 3 days to abandon the building. 3 days, and we're out of a third to half our space. So we went into, it was amazing. Poor dean at the time, Patsy Brown, had to deal and manage those issues. So now, in many ways, it was the best thing that ever happened to human ecology, because it forced us to reimagine a new building, a building that brings in science and design together. So we have the new human ecology building, and when we were building that with the state money that came to replace it, the college we decided to invest in a commons area that brings all the buildings together in this beautiful atrium space. And there are a lot of atriums on the campus, but our atrium's kind of different. And the reason it's different is this is where courage and faith in your students, because they're so cool, but it is faith. I gave all the FFE, which is furnishings, fixings, and equipment budget, to the students and said, go to it and make this commons. All the furnishings, all the design elements, it's yours. But it's got to service students, it's got to service faculty, it's got to service staff. And it was faculty mentored, so they made it a class. And anyone who's walked through the Commons, it's spectacular. It's created a community, not only for HUMEC students, but I will go through the Commons and I would say about half the students are HUMEC in there and about half the students from all the other colleges, because first of all, it's the first stop to get warm coming from North Campus. So you go, oh God, I go get coffee at Martha's and that's cool. But it is, I still walk through it. It's 6 years old now. And I still walk through it and I can't believe it's there because it's so, so nice. And the defining feature, this is one of the coolest things. So the architect delivered the space and he called it the ceiling. It's about this height, and the ceiling is called the Starry Night ceiling because there's probably hundreds of little lights that provide the lighting for the Commons area. So I said to the students, this is where I know nothing about design, but you kind of get a sense of your college, you know kind of what makes it tick. And I said, it just feels too warehousey. I feel like I'm in a BJ's. Can you make it more intimate? So the students did the most amazing thing. They figured we're in Ithaca. You can't ever see the stars at night because it's always cloudy. So they designed these clouds that hang from the ceiling, these white clouds. And this was the first LEED Platinum building on the Cornell campus. We're very proud of that. And they found this material made in, I think it's either Australia or New Zealand, I can't remember. And it's used to clean up oil spills. So it's these this almost like plastic-like circles. It floats on water, oil gets caught in the ringlets, and then they float the oil away. That's kind of what this material is designed for. So they contact this firm, they put them into and design these cloud structures, and the firm agrees to send them these ringlets in shapes of clouds. They weigh almost nothing, and they hang from the ceiling with lights coming into the clouds. And the first thing you see when you come into that Commons, it dominates the field, are those, I think, 5 to 7 clouds that come down from the ceiling. And that's the students, that's their imagination. So using our students as a living learning experience, what does it do? It integrates this, and the principle that allowed me to do this and have the courage to do this was the integration of research, education, and outreach. Here it is, we have the resources, let's let the students integrate their curriculum, their design curriculum, with real life stuff. And they are so proud of that. The students who come back that helped design this, it's their clouds, it's their Commons. And how cool is that? We need to compete with that cheering. One more question?
Cornell, Arts and Sciences, 97.
Yep.
In leading a community, it's very important that we imagine, and especially if you're with like a class, or region, or an affinity group. So I guess if your goal is to have your community provide a unique and meaningful contribution in support of the university, how can we then, as we're sitting here at CALC, imagine what we're going to go in the next year? And what should we be doing today in our focus groups to really imagine and envision what we'd like to see our classes do, our affinity groups, and then how can we put that into place?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. To be effective volunteers, you need to, so one of the values of CALC, I think, is to become informed, because if you are not sort of knowledgeable about what's going on, it's very hard to envision having an impact. So Ryan Lombardi, I don't know if you were at the presentation on the housing, this is a huge deal for Cornell. So thinking about the creative ways that affinity groups can think about how they can make a difference when 4 years from now, the whole North Campus is going to be fundamentally different. How to imagine what that might be like, and have volunteers sort of think through not only the way they can engage with that and be helpful to that, but also then when you're moving it into the development side, get excitement about it. Because what I've noticed about on the development side is development doesn't follow weakness, it follows excitement and strength. And so we have an amazing thing that's going on at Cornell. Adding 2,000 beds will change the experience in such a positive way. And so the big things that are happening at Cornell, I would pay careful attention to those. The other one is, and if you listen to Martha, she'll say it, I'm already tired of hearing it a little bit because, we're going to hear it so much. But the One Cornell thing, I'm such a believer in the One Cornell thing. You've just heard me say about this. But she's really serious about this. And not only One Cornell on the Ithaca campus, but Cornell Tech, Weill Cornell, all the colleges. So we just signed with ILR. We just have this wonderful we're going to be moving in to a new place down in I think 19. That's going to help bring different Cornell, New York programs together in one place. This combination of the rural, wonderful campus upstate with the downstate and New York things, this is very distinctive that not many places could ever say this. So how to work with those big structural movements and get how it can help affinity groups take part of that, influence it to some degree, and shape it is really helpful. The word, I don't like the word impact. In our mission statement, I'll go back to the mission statement, and we actually debated this. It's improving lives by exploring and shaping. And a lot of people had the word the impact of the college, and I don't think, my view is a little bit humble about this, that research and the student education, eventually it's going to impact the world, but it's very non-direct causal. But what we do is really shape things. We shape the opportunities to have impact. And so how do you think about how your volunteer groups can shape the way in which students experience Cornell of the future? I think would be the guiding principle that I would try to use for all these affinity groups. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.